Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is the 18th of September 2024 and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We will begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the elections, the first phase of the elections that are happening, the sham elections as many say, in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir under Indian occupation. We'll be highlighting different aspects of that in our very first segment. What happened, what has happened till now, and what are the expectations from the different quarters. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Israel war on Gaza. Today is day 347 of that very conflict, that very war that has been going on since the last 11 months plus. We'll be highlighting what the latest details are, and of course the highlight is the 12 people who've been killed, including an 8-year-old girl, and 2,750 people who've been wounded in explosions of handheld pagers used by different members in Lebanon, across Lebanon and Syria. Then we're going to talk about the Afghan diplomats who have caused controversy in Afghanistan by not standing up to the Pakistani national anthem. Why did that happen and what are the repercussions? We'll be highlighting that in our third segment. Then we are going to talk about the Palestinian, of course these are the stories that we'll be highlighting during the course of the show. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the elections in the Indian held valley under Indian supervision, quote unquote, that many are now calling sham elections. We've been joined by Dr. Mujahid Gilani. He's a Kashmiri leader right here in the studios. Dr. Mujahid, thank you very much for finally having accepted our invite. Let's begin with this very first phase of the election that so many people call sham elections that have gone away, that have gone ahead, and of course the elections have now finished because it was the first phase. The second phase is in a couple of days' time. Over 1 million Indian troops, Gilani Saab, are watching over the polls. Electoral process has been rigged to favour pro-India parties through manipulative reforms and gerrymandering, diluting the Muslim representation. What are the after effects of such elections for the valley and for India?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Well, Umar, when we talk about elections, one of the few things that we must understand and talk about is how India is actually manipulating the on-ground state affairs, the on-ground affairs in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Elections, for once, India is trying to present to the world as a normalcy, as a facade that we are conducting elections in this valley, we are conducting elections in a union territory post 2019, so everything is essentially normal. We are in fact following the orders of the Indian Supreme Court that had ordered the Indian authorities to conduct and hold an election.
I don't even think they would have gone for that.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. But for once, we, the people who are outside, living in the free atmosphere, living in the free environment, need to understand that whatever concessions India is trying to make at this point in time is essentially something that is not going to change anything on the ground. Even the international press and media is considering this, whichever vote is going to be casted by the people of Jammu and Kashmir, as a protest vote against whatever policies BJP has been meandering in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, particularly post 2019 and particularly after the Governor Raj inside the valley. It's been almost now 8 to 9 years that the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir has not had a so-called democratic government. So today the first phase of election, as it comes to an end, and most of the areas covered are South Kashmir areas, we will get to know about how the people are going to react. Today you and everybody must understand that the Kashmiris have not given up, that the Kashmiris have not given in, that the Kashmiris are not considering elections as a replacement of a free, impartial and free plebiscite that is to be conducted under the supervision of United Nations. But the Kashmiris today, whoever is going to vote as a protest vote against whatever policies of BJP.
And I hope they vote for the right person instead of the BJP cronies that are there in some seats, because BJP has not even put their candidates in all of the seats. No. Now, let's talk about the IIOJK. Let's talk about this Srinagar city that has been declared a red zone for many things, including drone operations, and there's a restriction of movement, but the restriction of movement has always been there. I mean, it has been there since decades now. There's also a lot of people who are saying that this looks more like a war zone rather than a place where elections are being conducted, and of course this puts a lot of questions as far as the legitimacy of the whole process is concerned. Doesn't this, in your point of view, and I'm asking you, but I know the answer, does this contradict Narendra Modi's regime's quote unquote claims of a democratic exercise.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you have gone through the speech of Narendra Modi in Jammu just a few days back,
Saturday,
his his words were essentially that we now have new Kashmir. The stones that were pelted against the terrorist forces of India are now going to be used in the building of a new Kashmir, as this is the ending phase of a so-called terrorism. And at the very same day, the Kashmiris responded to his speech by essentially getting 2 more Indian soldiers to what they deserved. We must understand that the Kashmiris on the ground know very well what BJP stands for.
And has always stood for since day one. They have made things very clear as to what their whole manifesto was.
Absolutely. From the point of 2019, the 5th of August, when BJP claimed that this abrogation of Article 370 and 35A is going to bring happiness, development, joy and FDIs in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, today we see that none of that holds true. So the people of Jammu and Kashmir, particularly the youth of Kashmir, at this point in time have a resentment, and they are going to represent and they are going to show and project that resentment, their hatred for BJP in one way or the other. If you've gone through a few of the footages that I had the privilege of going through and seeing, Jamaat Islami is one of the party that is essentially contesting these elections. But if you've heard the slogans the people over there chant are the same slogans that we used to hear in our childhood. That is Nara Takbir, Allahu Akbar. And these very same slogans were curbed by BJP post 2019. But today, no matter what, no matter how, somehow we need to understand and accept that the supreme power that actually runs this world has once again filled the skies of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir with the same chanting, with the same slogans.
Dr. Gilani, Kashmiris are demanding a UN-sanctioned plebiscite, not manipulated polls. Many of the people are raising a question marks as far as this whole 3-phase poll process is concerned. The granting of voter rights to outsiders, also something that they have done since some time, has also further eroded this whole political status, sparking concerns about the region's future as well. What's your comment on all of these?
You see, Omar, we need to actually date back to 2019. In fact, we need to date back to 2014. That was when we, the citizens, had actually filed in a complaint in the courts of India. Settler colonialism has been a part of BJP's designs ever since. It's been almost 10-11 years in particular, but it's been almost for the past 70 years that whichever party has come into power in India has tried to erode the somehow autonomic status of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. But also at the same time, we must understand that settler colonialism over the past 5 years has been the main reason of whatever India is doing. The foundation of it, the basis of Indian designs is settler colonialism. So whether you get to have people from outside, that's mainland Indian dominion, into the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, give them lands, give them homes and houses, or give them the right to vote. This is all a part of settler colonialism.
Dr. Gilani, Kashmiri leaders have boycotted the elections. They call them a ploy to legitimize India's occupation. The whole question mark is on the legitimization of the whole process, whether it be the Indian Hill Valley, whether it be also 2019's illegal abrogation. Will Modi succeed in doing that, in legitimizing his 2019 abrogation?
Well, this is a very important question, because when we talk about legitimacy, we must take into account what legitimacy is and how legitimacy is defined. And this is the international prism. The United Nations actually defines legitimacy. The United Nations actually defines what is going to be done in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or even Azad Kashmir for that reason. So elections in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, per se, United Nations are not a replacement of a free, unbiased and impartial plebiscite that is ultimately going to be held under the supervision of United Nations. So even if Modi does beat the trumpet that we have held elections, even if Modi does continue on to say that we are now having a Naya Kashmir, that is not going to stand, because in the international court or in the international eyes, in the movers and shakers houses, this is not the matter.
I think even the whole process of starting to conduct any kind of elections in the Indian held valley is against all norms, because it is a contested area. This is an area on which countless resolutions are present within the United Nations. True. And these resolutions have still not come to fruition. So I fail to understand, even the abrogations of Article 370-35A is something that I fail to understand, and on how India could call it a legitimate action. And even these elections, I fail to understand how they can be called legitimate. Now, Ali Raza Syed, who is the chairman of the Kashmir Council Europe, says India claims to establish a puppet assembly in the occupied valley through this election drama. He also says that India is misleading the international community by staging these elections. Do you feel that the EU or the United Nations are watching whatever is happening in the Indian held valley? Will they listen to plight such as that of Ali Raza Syed and the countless Kashmiris who are saying the same thing?
That's a very tricky question to answer, Omar. We must actually understand one of the major facts. The world listens only when the world has its own interest.
I agree.
But the other thing that we have is actually presenting and hammering the facts to the world. These elections are being held in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are completely against the United Nations resolutions. In fact, UN resolution 1957 that was passed specifically against the elections that were held at that time in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So today, if a Kashmiri stands up and if a Kashmiri speaks up against these elections and actually tells the world that this is what the BJP is actually thinking and considering this to be the end point of the elections, this is what's going to happen. A genocide is already underway, and we must understand that presenting and hammering this fact to the world is very important. Even if the world doesn't listen now, but if we document it, if we present it to the world, if we continue reiterating that this is our stance, this is our narrative, and this is the human right violations that are being carried out by the Indian illegal terrorist forces on the ground. This is very important to do. If not today, maybe tomorrow, but the voices of Kashmiris will be heard.
We also see some of the opposition parties that are lending their support to the Kashmiri cause, whether it be for politics or otherwise is something that only time will tell. I'll give you the example of Pawan Khera, who on Monday said that the Indian Congress National Conference Alliance will restore, quote unquote, restore Jammu and Kashmir's right to statehood. He also said that we will get back this right. He said that the whole situation is going to change. He used the quote "Haath badle gaye halat," and then of course he has also talked about, while talking to Economic Times, the Indian Prime Minister, while addressing a rally in Udhampur, says the task of giving the status of full statehood to Jammu and Kashmir will be done by a BJP government. And in response to that, Mr. Khera questioned how the BJP could be the one to provide statehood when they were the ones who stole that very statehood on the 5th of August 2019. Will Congress succeed in changing the scenario as far as Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned?
Well, at this point in time, more or less all the parties are rallying towards one point, and that point is the restoration of the statehood of Jammu and Kashmir, or perhaps the restoration of both the articles as well. For once, maybe this is a point. Yes, if you're contesting elections under the Indian Constitution, this is how you're going to go with. But when you talk to a Kashmiri, particularly a Kashmiri who has a family who is still behind bars inside the Tihar jail and who are being tortured as well equally, I must say that this was never our destination. That this is never our aim, that whether it's National Conference, that whether it's National Congress, whether it's BJP, whichever party it be, whether it's Mehbooba Mufti, we are not looking forward to the restoration of the articles or the statehood. What a Kashmiri wants is a complete freedom from the Indian dominion, from Indian hegemony. We want our birthright back, and that is the right of self-determination. So for once, maybe, yes, these elections may or might be providing a breathing space for the Kashmiris on the ground in terms of coming out on the roads. But this is definitely not the aim and objective of a Kashmiri.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mujahid Gilani, to have joined us, to have discussed this first phase of these quote-unquote sham elections that are happening in the Indian Hill Valley, and of course the reactions that are coming not only from within India but also from outside of India, from all across the world, on the legitimacy of these elections. That is the main question that is around these elections. Thank you very much to have highlighted that, and we'll see how these elections go. And on the 4th of October, if I'm not wrong, this is when they are going to announce which is the party that has 8th. Okay, so 4 days ahead.
That's the third phase.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Gilani, to have joined us. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns the Israeli war on Gaza. We are on day 347. I mean, I shouldn't use the word highlight, but the most important aspect of the recent developments is the sophisticated attacks via pagers in Lebanon, and how this technology is being used in the war as well. At least 12 people have been killed, including an 8-year-old girl, and 2,750 have been wounded in these simultaneous pager attacks. And of course, we also know that the communication devices had been acquired after the Lebanese group's leader ordered members in February to stop using mobile phones, and warning that they could be tracked by Israeli intelligence. And of course, they wanted to continue the process through other sophisticated devices, and as per their allegations, it is the Israeli intelligence that has manipulated all of these pager devices so that they could be used, in fact, in favor of the Israelis. And this is exactly what happened when simultaneously all these pager devices exploded. And there are harrowing stories on how these exploded and how they have impacted those who have been affected by these, and the thousands and thousands who have been injured. A lot of them have been injured and are in a critical state due to these injuries. We've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. Fahad Masood, international security analyst, joins us online. In the studios, we've been joined by Asad Baig. He's the director of Media Matters for Democracy. Let's begin with the Fahad. Fahad, Israel doesn't claim the attack, but Reuters, which is a very important news agency, cites informed resources and says that Israel's Mossad spy agency planted the explosive inside 5,000 pagers imported by Hezbollah before the detonation on Tuesday. Several assassinations have also happened in the past 11 months, including the killing of Hezbollah's principal commander Fawad Shukr. Does Hezbollah view these pager attacks as a major escalation? And why, in your point of view, was Hezbollah using pagers?
So technology has come of age. These pages were first used by medical personnel in the doctor's domain. They were utilized to inform of emergency situations. Right now, in a 5G high-tech environment, there is high probability of getting hacked systems information-wise. Communications can be and traced as well. To go back to a rudimentary method of paging, which was in vogue back in the late 90s and the early 2000s, now was the safe solution for this communication purposes. But alas, the challenge was taken up by Mossad. If it was a one-off event, it would have been taken as a coincidence. But in reality, this is a big success for Mossad, who has been trying to take care of the stated enemy Hezbollah through various kinetic methods. Now they have resorted to a disruptive mode of attack, which is the non-kinetic method, where they are utilizing passive methodology of coercion to take care of, in their words, miscreants for the state of Israel. So that is where the challenge lies, and I'm looking forward to claims that will come, may it be overt or covert claims by the Israeli administration, where they will at a point in time agree and admit that they were successful in neutralizing assets of the Hezbollah in the north of Israel.
Right. Stay online with us. Asad, there are so many different aspects to the war between Israel and Palestine, also the war that has now escalated beyond Gaza and Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Houthis, and of course the trying of the Israelis to bring in, to reap in somehow Iran in all of this as well, which Iran hasn't for the moment. Fahad talked about coercion, talked about pressure, methods, talked about kinetic and non-kinetic methods. In this day, when the internet, the social media, and the fifth generation warfare is something that is being used rampantly in all the different national and international wars. What do you foresee as far as these very escalations are concerned? Because when you look at social media as well, people write whatever they want to interpret and whatever they want to, and people believe in that without any fact checking. How do you see this?
This is very interesting, and I think Fahad has really focused on the security aspect of the things. I think I'm going to take a very standard human rights stance on it, because look, obviously there is war, and obviously this was a act of a war crime, because innocent children were also killed in the process and all that. But I think what has happened here is what we call the weaponization of technology. And I'm not talking about defense technology. I'm talking about the technology that all of us, you, me, and Fahad most probably, also use in our daily lives. I'm talking about the social media companies. I'm talking about the mobile devices, for that matter, in this case, the pages, right? I think this has raised very important questions about, one, the transparency within the technology companies. Who made these pages? How were the Israeli intelligence? According to Reuters, obviously, there is
of course, we also
really claimed any
Reuters,
responsibility.
yes.
But citing what we have read through Reuters, because Reuters specifically used these words that they influence the supply chain. So how is that the Mossad or any intelligence agency for matter were able to access the supply chain and influence it, and not just influence it, but to the point that they manipulated it with weaponization, like insertion of explosive material into the devices? That's a big deal. Number two, how does that pan out for other technology companies now? I mean, we know that the Google and Amazon have been supporting and have been providing technological support to the Israeli military through their project, the Nimbus, wherein there has been a lot of
there has been a lot of protest on that.
Exactly.
As well.
There has been a lot of terminations as well from Microsoft and Google and various other companies. There is this whole campaign of Stop Tech for Genocide, if I'm remembering it right, which is currently going on. And I'm very happy to say that a lot of globally speaking, digital rights activists are also raising their voice. But my point remains, how do we make sure that these technology companies, and I'm not talking about some obscure company working from, let's say, in Hungary or any other European country. I'm talking about the mainstream technology countries that, Khalid, you and me every day, we rely on them, these technologies. How do we
because
ensure?
Today, if it's pages, tomorrow it could be mobile phones.
Exactly. How do we ensure? And if today it's supposedly Israel, tomorrow it can be anybody. If Israeli agencies can get access to supply chains, then who's to say that the Taliban or any other miscreant in the world, for that matter, or cartels or any mafias, for instance, can't get access? So this idea of weaponization of technology, I think, it's a lot more dangerous than it sounds on paper. And I really think that the civil society across the world, and not just Pakistan, across the world, should come together and ask for more transparency within these tech
and rules and regulations. I think that is also extremely pertinent in this case, because we have seen the dastardly results that it could have. Fahad, coming to you, Hezbollah promises to continue its operations to support Gaza, the people and the resistance, despite these dastardly pager explosions that have rocked Lebanon, and of course have resulted in the thousands of casualties, thousands of people who've been injured, and the 12 who've been killed. Is this the beginning, in your point of view, of a new phase of the Israel-Hezbollah conflict? What could be the repercussions?
So the world of war, as we call them, so in the globalized event of things, we are moving into the next phase of disruptive technologies or disruptive war-making potential. Something like DJI drones, $4,000 US, getting them across, weaponizing it, and utilizing it for neutralizing a high-value asset like a multi-million-dollar tank or an aircraft, a fighter aircraft. So Hezbollah has this capacity, and especially in a globalized world where we have democratization of finance, information, as well as technology, I don't believe anyone across the world has the capacity to stop this war being waged or taken to the next level. The only thing that can be done right now is to make sure we are able to neutralize, make sure we bring people to the negotiation table, because no matter which conflict we look at, everything ends up on the negotiation table. May it be the victor or the vanquished, we need to bring in the right negotiations taking place at whichever neutral venue. This two-state solution, I'll reiterate, the two-state solution for Israel, which was promised by the Democrats when they were in power in USA and given as an option to Netanyahu, in my humble opinion, is the solution to the whole gambit of unwavered and continuous cycle of attacks, and people once again are the ones who are losing at the V end of things. The first rule of war.
Fahad, it's very interesting that you say that the two-state solution is the final, is the thing that you think needs to happen. But when you look at even the ceasefire proposal that has not been accepted by Israel since the number of weeks that we've been hearing about it, despite the fact that the US is the one that has been pushing for this three-phase deal. And we hear time and again that there have been new amendments made, whereas from the Palestinian side, Hamas has said that we are ready, we are fine with this three-phase ceasefire agreement. It is Israel that is, trying to create different diversions as far as acceptance of this is all. If they can't even come to terms with a ceasefire agreement, how can they come to terms with a two-state solution?
Yes, once again, the point that I made earlier, the victor and the vanquished. Right now, there is no victor, no vanquished. The only person or the only factor that is losing is humanity. The Israeli side does not want a solution because they believe that their military might can take out the Hamas miscreants in Gaza. But sorry to say, they are fighting a war in which both sides are losing both human resource and other resources. And sorry to say, they're not wanting to understand, as you've correctly mentioned, the price that is being paid by both sides, Israel as well as Hamas. And behind all of this is the intent to grow the size of the state of Israel, the greater Israel as we know it, or the plan that is from Euphrates to river to the Mediterranean Sea. That is the intent behind all of this taking place.
All right. Coming to you, Asad, Fahad mentioned a term that I'd like to, point towards you, and that is disruptive technology. I think that many of the powers that we are using this disruptive technology. For example, let's take the case of these pages. Expert there is an explosive, a type of PETN that has been embedded within the pager's electronic circuit that showed an advanced level of technical expertise also, and the involvement of state level intelligence agency. Of course, they are pointing towards Mossad, but they didn't say. The shipment was on its way, not directly to Lebanon because it's forbidden for Lebanon to receive these devices. It stopped in the harbor for 3 months, and it is during this time that all the manipulation took place. The way Israelis did it, they sent a message to these pages, and with the message there were errors, 3-time errors, and of course the people needed to look at it, and then the pages started vibrating and the heating up, and then they exploded. This is a theory. I'd like to understand how much of this theory could be true. Second part of my question concerns the tech industry. Now, because of this whole Pages scandal, Taiwan's crucial tech industry has been drawn into these Middle East politics. They say that the firm that's known as Gold Policy, they have denied that they manufactured the AR924 model pages. They say that it was made by a European company named BAC through a licensing deal. I'd like your comment on all these combined together. Do you feel that the tech industry is at stake because of what has happened? B, the different theories revolving around how this pager explosion happened. What's your take on that?
Look, I think this is all very murky. So at this point, there isn't much that we can say, obviously, right? But what we know, let's talk about what we know. One, the pagers were most likely tempered with in the production, in the process of production.
Okay.
Right? And that's what also Reuters has said, because they have specifically used, which really caught my eye, the word that they've used is the production line, I suppose, if that's the word they've used.
All right.
Which is really concerning, number one. Number two, the reason that we are so concerned as a digital rights activist.
But if I'm not wrong, they've not only cited production, but they've also cited delivery.
Yes.
So that is where the theory that during the 3 months that it was stopped at the harbour is when they could have been manipulated.
Like I said, things are murky. At this point, we can't say much about it. But here's what we know. Number one, we know that the major technology companies like Amazon and Google, as I said, have been extending support in terms of dealing with the Israeli military and the Israeli government. Number one.
Since quite a long time.
For quite some time now. We know for sure that Israeli technology has been used by other countries for surveillance, by other countries in terms of procurement and so on and so forth, right? And this brings our focus on this, again, at the cost of repeating myself, on the militarization, on the weaponization of technology. Now, Khalid, if you go back in time and you sort of see how the daily use of technology was weaponized in, let's say, 1,000 years ago, that is by poisoning the waters, for instance, right? Now, that is a kind of a concern which goes for all of the human civilization, and same is in the case with technology. Now, my point is, if you can't trust your mobile phone, if you can't trust the device that you're holding in your hand, you can't trust the service that you're using, you can't trust the platforms that you're accessing for your emails, your very precious data, who can you trust? And how do we go about this? And again, this is not the first show that we have done on the platform accountability. Khalid, you have been quite literally taking the lead on this conversation in Pakistan, I would say. And this is where I think we should put a stop now. We should say that enough is enough. And civil society organizations, not just in Pakistan, but the whole region should come together and push for what we call a human rights-based assessment of the social media, and not just social media, but the civil tech and technology companies. Because look, these companies, they call themselves technology companies. We don't believe that. We believe that they're a civil tech company, which essentially means that they have a function exactly 120 years ago when the American petroleum companies, for instance, had a function, and they were, through the Supreme Court order, were divided into 7 major companies and so on, because they had too much power. Similarly, we believe companies like Meta, companies like Google, they have a civil function. So it's not just that they're a profitable
it's so
company,
interesting
right?
to say they have a civil function, but the fact is, Asad, that despite them having a civil function, there are certain, how should I say, details of their intentions that will always supersede these civilian responsibilities of all these companies.
Why we want to push this idea of platform accountability through civil mechanisms.
All right. Last question to you, Fahad. I'd like to understand, Palestine, that has been now promoted to observer status at the UNGA, has submitted a draft resolution at the body demanding an end to Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian territories, citing the ICJ. Different countries have had different opinions on that, including Pakistan's Rakam Saab as well. How do you see this resolution at the UNGA, even if it passes through? What are going to be the eventualities of such a resolution?
Well, passing is a far-fetched idea right now, considering the veto that always goes against any resolution that is favoring the state of Palestine. I hope, pray and believe I am wrong, but I don't foresee too much of a future of it, because there are players, which I wouldn't like to cite right now, which will go against the resolution. Even if it is passed, it will be very challenging, if at all impossible, to enact it as well. I once again I'm skeptic, let's keep it there, of it, one, going through, and two, if it is going through, it will have a lot of effect.
Security expert to have joined us and to have discussed this very important lingering issue that has now entered its 347th day. I hope we'll get to see more of you in the coming days. Thank you very much to have joined us. Let's come to you, Asad. Asad, I'd like to understand something. We were talking about the civil responsibility, and of course we all know there are certain interests that supersede everything. what effect is it going to have on industry? I wouldn't say industry giants, but companies such as Gold Apollo from Taiwan or BAC that the Taiwanese company is pointing fingers towards, as they are the one who had manufactured these pages. Do you feel that international organizations, whether they be human rights organizations or civil liberties organizations or judicial organizations, maybe even ICC or ICJ, might pitch in and might say, we need more accountability from organizations such as yours? Will the results be a global change in the way the tech industry functions?
Look, Khalid, to be honest with you, a change is bound to happen. That's what I very strongly believe. It can't go like it's going for now. We can't really have 4 or 5 giants of information power in the world like there are right now, for instance, right? It's bound to change. But how will it change is another question, number one. Number two, I really hope and I really pray that ICJ and other international forums step into this and they do ask for an actual investigation as to what happened and how did it happen. Because if, like we are speculating, because this is all speculation at this
is all
point,
speculation, there is no proof.
If our speculation is true and if it really was influenced in any way or manner in the production process and not the transport process, then what we are looking at is a whole new ball game, right? We are looking at a completely new kind of a collaboration between warmongers and technologists, and we are looking at disastrous consequences, let's just say that, and so on. But Khalid, I think what really needs to change is one, that the civil society, not the governments, the civil society needs to step in and they need to have more power within the systems. A model that we've been really pushing, not just in Pakistan, across the world, is the human rights, civil society based human rights assessment of the tech companies, which essentially is to say that we ensure that they are that safe that they're leading us to believe. That's number one. Number two, you must know that there are IETF standards, if I'm recalling them right, for all of the internet, for instance, right, the IP protocols and so on. Similar safety standards, and they're global standards, like all the technologies adhere with them. Similar safety standards for companies need to be developed, and they will obviously be developed in collaboration, probably through the UN forums or others, but that need to happen. And number three, we need to ensure that the safety within, and I'm not talking about the physical safety, but we've been discussing this, right? We were talking about how nudity appeared, for instance, on the Instagram timelines of children, and there was a whole Senate hearing in the US. So this safety needs to take the precedence when it comes to technologies or civil technologies. And that really needs to happen today, and not tomorrow or any other day for that matter.
But coming back to the whole thing, when you look at even civil liberties or human rights being mangled the way they are, whether it be in Palestine or whether it be in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir or other places in the world, and the fact that, for example, if we take the case of Palestine, even the ICC and the ICJ have involved themselves, they have taken out rulings, but nothing has happened. The United Nations Security Council took out a resolution, and that resolution was called non-maintainable after that. Israel continues despite all the protests that have been going on across the world. You talk of civil liberties, how the people from every religion, including from the Jewish faith, are getting together and are also, highlighting what is happening, but it all falls on deaf ears. Do you feel, in your point of view, that such change in technology that could benefit mankind in the long run could also fall on deaf ears?
Oh, absolutely. It will for a while, Khalid. It's not going to be an easy process. There will be a lot of resistance. There will be a certain amount of time that needs to be invested into this. But like I said, I strongly believe that ultimately this will happen. You know why? Because the people who are behind these companies, they're human beings in the end as well. The advertisers who are supporting these companies, who are generating revenue for these companies, are in the end humans as well. They have the children, they have their families, and so on and so forth. So ultimately, this will have to happen, and this will happen. But the point is that what is the role that we have to play? Are we playing that role? Are we doing enough at this point in time?
But that is a question that will remain for time immemorial,
Absolutely.
at least for the year, at least the year or 2 years to come, whether we are doing enough, whether doing enough for the people in these besieged areas, whether we are doing enough for to hamper such technological progress that could lead to more damage in form of deaths and injuries. Let's hope sanity prevails. That's all I can say. And companies like organizations such as yours are also working very diligently in that matter through the fact-checking software that you've taken out and so much stuff. Thank you very much, Asad, to have joined us. That was, ladies and gentlemen, Asad Baig, Director MMFD, to have joined us and to have talked to us about the technological aspect of this all. Let's come to our last story, ladies and gentlemen, and that kind of angers me as a Pakistani. Our national anthem is something that is very dear to us all. And wherever this national anthem, is played, whether it be in a cinema hall, whether it be elsewhere, whether it be during a ceremony, everybody who's there stands up in respect of a national anthem. This is a universal law, and this is a law that is applied to everybody irrespective of the belief, of the religion, of the background that they have. What we saw in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, as you can see in the parallel window, where the Afghan consulate officials, including the Consul General Muhibullah Shakir and his colleague, remained on their seats despite the fact that the national anthem of Pakistan was playing, is a disrespect, to say the least, as far as Pakistan is concerned. I don't understand why Afghanistan, despite the fact that Pakistan has always been there for them in the good and the bad times, are showing such level of disrespect to our country, to our nation, and to our principles and our constitution by doing exactly what they are doing. And I think this is a very sad reminder and also a wake-up call for all those who thought that maybe Afghanistan could somehow, somewhere, understand what Pakistan's realities and what Pakistan's objectives are. Let's hope again, as I said in the previous story, that sanity prevails. Till then, I really hope that we are going to have a very strong reaction. We've had that from the Foreign Office, and we hope we're going to have stronger reactions in the days to come. And we also would like to have an apology from the Afghan side as far as this is concerned. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to us. You and Pakistan, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.